Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. I am sitting here with Justin Bautier and just going to have a conversation with him about what he's done to be able to increase his revenue, to take his accounting practice from really being small and doing a little bit of everything for everybody to now being seen as an industry leader. So Justin, just want to say thank you for joining me today.
Mm-hmm.
And
Thank
before
you.
we get started, would you like to just share a little bit about what it is that you do and about how your practice is set up?
Sure. So I'm an enrolled agent and I'm a partner in a business called Calyx CPAs. Actually it's Calyx CPA LLC, but two of my partners are CPAs, so I tend to say Calyx CPAs, even though technically it's Calyx CPA LLC. So I have to be, for compliance purposes, I have to be very clear about that. And we niche in the cannabis industry, and we pretty much just provide a set of specific services: tax planning and preparation. We do business entity formation. Of course, we do a lot of consulting around the cannabis industry and the tax compliance rules and regulations. And then also we do QuickBooks online training.
Yeah. Go ahead. You want to finish up? Was there something else?
Well, that's pretty much all we do.
Okay, excellent. And we've known each other for quite a while, Justin.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've had the chance to actually work together also. Can you give me some backstory of how things were before we started working together?
Yeah, well, I was learning, I think. I was still learning how to be self-employed. I was learning how to be a good tax accountant. But I wasn't professionally taught in terms of how to conduct business, how to even be a good tax accountant. I was very much self-taught. I did have a couple mentors for here and there, but they definitely were more generalist. They were people who worked for relatively low amounts of money, giving a lot of their time away from free. And these are things that I was doing as well. Didn't understand value concepts. They were doing everything for everybody. And they had a very traditional tax accounting model, a business model. And it's not sustainable for a lot of people. You're either sacrificing your time and your quality of life, or you might be sacrificing your clients' quality of life with that traditional accounting model. Or maybe you have employees that you're renting their time, and I had a lot of employees, and I didn't have the right systems in place, and I wasn't being able to pay high quality employees. I wasn't being able to pay the high quality employees I had enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very stressful, and I was encountering a lot of fires. There was a lot of fires. So I was kind of at my wit's end when I finally reached out to you to work with you professionally, even though we've known each other, and I thought I knew everything. I don't know, or I just didn't feel the pain. But eventually that pain reached a crescendo, and I was at my wit's end. I'm like, anything will, like, whatever, just help me.
Well, I actually think that it was a couple years between maybe first thinking about us working together and us actually working together. Do
Yes.
you know what actually came to that crescendo, as you were talking about, that you just had to stop tolerating things? What made you decide to finally take the step of us working closely together?
Well, it was, the main thing was the pain that I was feeling, like I was on a wheel, like hamster wheel,
Mm-hmm.
and just being totally and utterly exhausted from being from what self-employment can do to a person, and not being educated. But then I think you encouraged me to go to QuickBooks Connect. A lot of what you were saying, was also espoused at QuickBooks Connect, and I was like, okay. You know, I listened to Ron Baker, and then, or maybe I listened to Ron Baker after we started, but all of these things like started then to serendipitously. Once I pulled the trigger with you, everything started to fall into place. Like all the right kinds of influences came in all at the same time. And Ingrid, I have to give props to Ingrid Edstrom too, and many of you, the people who you work with, probably know who she is as well. She was also early adopter of the QuickBooks Connect Kool-Aid, and also hired you as a business coach. So, and she told me about you, she told me about QuickBooks Connect, and I was at my wit's end. I'm like, okay, I'm now open-minded to these things. Whereas before I thought I just knew everything and knew how to do everything, so. Yeah.
Well, I think that you've actually always been someone who loves to keep on learning and absorb more knowledge, Justin. However, there were also some obstacles that were keeping you from making a decision working with me. Two stand out in my mind, but I was wondering what you feel some of those obstacles were that were coming up for you.
Well, limited belief. I don't know if this is where you're going, but
I'll tell you in a moment.
Is this where you're going? Like definitely limited beliefs or limited mindsets, and Loren, you are always saying to get out of your own way and those kinds of things. And that was, it took a while for me to then embody the realization that I was getting in my way. And those limiting beliefs are about like self-worth, and they could be about money, and the limiting your beliefs, the limiting beliefs about money, and you know, not really allowing yourself to be successful because you're afraid to be successful, or you're not worth it to you. So those are the kinds of things. And then I think just like ego, like for me, ego was really in my way. Like I thought things were a certain way, and then it turned out that they weren't that way at all. So, yeah.
Yeah, the thing that coming up for me is you had your mom working with you in your business.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's where the part of the crescendo came from, like reintroducing old family dynamics into my business, and essentially experiencing my childhood again.
Which is another conversation for another time.
Which is a different conversation.
But the fact that there's so many accounting professionals that are in a family-owned business where there's other people there that have an influence on what direction you decide to go in or not go in with your business. And that was one of the things that actually delayed our work together. The other part is when we were first really sitting down and talking seriously about working together, you had the money actually set aside for buying the building that you were working in at that point.
Right.
And you saw it as either I can invest in this building or I can work with you. I can't do both.
Yes.
And we had a conversation.
Yes. Yeah. And essentially you said that why can't we do both? Why can't you have both? Why can't you work with me and also acquire that building? And that was again another limiting belief. Like I was like, it's kind of a zero-sum game idea, or you know, I can only have one or the other. I can't have both. I can't have my time and my money. I can't have time and money. That's like, that is a limiting belief that so many business owners have. And that's not true. You can have both. You can get both. And yeah.
And I just want to acknowledge that kudos to you for jumping in and being open-minded to a way of looking at things, because I believe you bought the building 8 months after we started working together.
Yeah, yeah. Was able to get that building, and then I just recently bought another building next
Which
door,
is
a
fantastic.
nicer one. Yeah. So,
That's because you continue to be on an upward trajectory. And speaking about that, then I just want to say, what are some specific strategies that you put into play which help to grow your bank account and free up your time? Because you were just
mhm.
mentioning that.
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to kind of regress just a little bit,
Yep.
and then I want to tell the story because I tell this story to so many people, and I love it, and it's part of my strategy. But value pricing, of course, is really important. That's like number one. That was a big turning point because value pricing is recognizing the value that you're providing people, and that was something that I was completely lacking in terms of thinking that you only price hourly, which I'm sure many of the people who you visit with know how that will, value pricing. If you're billing by the hour, you're either hurting yourself or you're hurting your client.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know a lot of tax accountants, tax preparers will, for the first meet and greet in the first year, they might uh, charge 4 hours at $200 for $800 bill for a tax return. But the next year it's going to take them half as much time. But they may say that they're either going to take the hit and be like, well, actually it only took me an hour this time, so your formerly $800 tax return now is only $200, or they lie and say that it's the same as last year, I spent 4 hours. So you can't do that with hourly billing. Will just the better you work and the better you become, the less you make, even though you're providing the same kind of value. So I'll go back and talk about what I was going to say. Like when I first paid you, this was the big pivotal.
It was an investment, not a cost.
Yeah, it was an investment, but it was pretty significant. Like I was like, this is a big part of the down payment of my building, or I'm going to give you a check. And I was unfamiliar with coaching at that time. And I was like putting it in my head, and I was thinking about it hourly, and I'm thinking, wow, I've never paid anybody this much money on an hourly basis. And it's all a good thing. It's all good. I've never paid anybody. And then, so I gave you that check, and I remember kind of like tugging, not being able to let it go. But then I let it go. And for a while, I just felt totally and utterly sick, because even though you promised me, I'm going to be able to make money, and I'm going to be able to hire you and buy that building, I thought I just gave up buying the building. Like that's how I left. And I felt literally sick, and I was going to have to tell my wife, I just gave away, this much money for potentially nothing, because like I wasn't a believer at that time completely. It was a leap of faith completely. But then when it really set in, I realized that when I gave you that money, I just started valuing you at that time. And then I realized, wow, why can't I value myself that same way? And then that's when really the lights started turning on. Just the act of hiring you, or at using value pricing or fixed pricing. Just, I'm like, okay, I'm valuing Loren at this price. And then I'm like, well, how do I provide value? And so one of the things that I would do, what I used to do, is I was charging like $400 for a tax return. I really like the entity, the LLC, setting people up as a S corporation, and I know that your listeners will probably understand what I'm talking about. And you get a tax savings from S corporations, and I know all about it, like in and out. LLCs being taxed as S corporations, and I know that my clients were saving thousands of dollars every time I would do that, but yet I would charge $400, $200, $400. And every year they were getting thousands of dollars in tax savings from the knowledge that I planted the seed, I set them up, I did the tax returns, and they were saving thousands of dollars. And like, the lights turn on, I'm like, maybe this year I should get a little bit more of that. And then you encouraged me, charge more. Like, okay, let's do value pricing. And so I was like, okay. I'm gonna raise my prices, and I'm gonna do value pricing, and I'm gonna do proposals. And that was another thing, another key is proposals, giving people the option, giving people options to choose from. And then and everybody was like on board. I just raised my rates, 50 to 100%. And then I lost very little clients for that, like maybe three. Three clients were like,
okay, I just want to reframe that.
okay, sorry about that.
Raised, no. You're making an important point. You raised the rates on all your clients from 50 to 100%, and you only lost three.
I lost a very small fraction
okay.
because what I didn't know is they valued me. And they valued me to the amount that I could raise their rates 50 to 100%, and they still were like, okay, it's about time you raised your rates. Yeah. And so then I kind of, with them new clients. So then it was like, okay. So then for new clients, I would do proposals and I would raise it a little bit more. And people would say, yes, every time. And then I started to get into numbers that I thought was profoundly ridiculous. Like that I thought like, this is impossible. But when I started getting what I call like red folder plans, like my concierge level plan, and people were like signing on concierge, and this is before cannabis, this is before niching, like this is just general businesses, just regular business people. And then I think I've over the years, like on average, have increased my rates 10 times.
10 times.
10 times what I was charging.
Okay, let me just ask you, did you have an hourly rate when we first started working together?
Yes.
Can you share what it was?
I was charging $225 an hour.
Okay.
For tax.
Okay.
So,
okay. And what would you say your average is now?
I would say that I'm more, well, it depends on, are we talking about billable or are we talking about on average, what do I get paid even for downtime?
Well, what I hear is that you raised your rates 10 times, and I'm wondering, I mean, if we can quantify it with numbers, what is 10 times from what?
Well, for billable time, I'm probably at 400 to even 800. I totally have forgotten what my hourly. I mean, it really doesn't even come into my mind anymore.
You're not tracking time any longer. You stopped that.
But what's on my tax return went from, it's 4 times as much as what I was when I was.
Okay, but that's significant. I mean, you're making more than some, professionals that we expect to be at the high end, and kudos to you for doing that.
Right, and I'm not looking for like praise, or I'm not prideful about it. I'm just letting people know like that this is real, and it like slingshotted me into like now more of an abundance mindset where people are, it's a win-win kind of thing now. Every time I'm meeting with people, this is a win-win. I'm not taking their money anymore. Like they're transitioning their money into different kind of value, into investment. And we are like increasing. And so then the niching was the other thing. In Southern Oregon, we have a lot of cannabis businesses and whatnot. It's an outdoor grow center in the nation. So a lot of people were knocking on my door for services in terms of working with cannabis producing farms, those kinds of things. And I started going to trade events, and that's another one, going to your niching and then going to your trade shows and whatnot, and really getting to know the industry and really, even though it's fun to have a variety of businesses, going to these trade shows can also be fun. You could imagine how fun it is to go to Las Vegas to like a marijuana business conference. It's wild, but it's very interesting, and then essentially they refer other people to you, and you now can speak their language, and it doesn't have to be cannabis. It could be anything. It could be tourism or bookkeeping or accounting. And when you speak their language, then they know you're the real deal. And that immediately puts a premium on what they're going to pay you and how they value you. And there's a lot of niche vocabulary in the cannabis industry in terms of growing practices, in terms of rules and regulations around that, in terms of how the tax returns have to be prepared, because they're illegal federally. So I'm preparing tax returns that are reporting illegal business income. So you have to be very educated around that. Going out and getting continuing education that is being offered by other people, other accountants that also do work in that industry, because there's always somebody who's been doing it before you, like at least for me, not many, but some people have had, some really good refined practices that seem to be working. And even though they weren't perfectly refined, I picked up a lot of knowledge from those people that were specializing in this industry. So yeah, okay.
And I just want to maybe reframe or summarize what some of your specific strategies were. Is that first, it's about value. You had to value yourself before you could expect anybody else to value. And then it was about being able to communicate your value when meeting with a potential client. Being able to price for value to separate your fees from time, the niching, and then going to trade shows for that particular niche. And there it was relationship building. Does that sound like the specific strategies?
Absolutely. That's several of the many,
And because you've now separated your fees from time, is there maybe a process that you use for analyzing and quoting your services?
I think so. I mean, bidding, it's kind of like bidding, like construction companies do, where they'll go out and they'll do a bid for a building. You have to be careful. You don't want to be bidding low, and then, which I've had those experiences where I bid and then I'm like, ooh, like I wish I had, this wasn't worth it. So you do have to take the risk and attempt to, but it's an art form to price. So I don't necessarily have a structured way of doing it. And I know that's very uncomfortable for some people, but if you are experienced in your industry, you can, so let's say bookkeeping, for example, you get the information like the credit cards and the bank, the credit card statements and the bank statements, and you look at the bookkeeping that they have, and you can kind of see, this is going to take me this much time. You can at least see what your inputs are there. I would say if you're thinking this cleanup, for example, is going to take you 8 to 16 hours, then you should anticipate 32 hours, right?
Probably.
And then you're like, okay, I want $75 an hour for this. So 32 times 75, that would be like the bare minimum that you ask for. That would be like, if I get this project, then I'll be happy with this. But then, and this is Ron Baker is who coined this, or he has the golden pancake idea where, I don't know, $1,000, it's called the $1,000 pancake or something like that. There's a restaurant that will sell.
Right.
And that's the fist bump plan. So you give them a plan, you give them watered down, like, this is just bare minimum compliance. I'm going to do this, and then we'll have to renegotiate a plan in the future, and don't call me. Because I'm just going to do this. This is the bare minimum plan. And then you got the middle tier plan that adds a little bit more to it. And then you got your top tier concierge plan, in which you're just like, they're going to love you and you're going to love them. And here's my cell phone and text me anytime. And that's going to be substantially priced higher. And that's the fist bump price. Like if you get that one, they're your new best friend. So I would say that inputs, bare minimum inputs, generous contingencies, taking into consideration contingencies, bottom tier price.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay.
Right.
But most
Mm-hmm.
people will be drawn to the middle price. People will
Mm-hmm.
be drawn to that middle plan because the middle plan, they're comparing the plans.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's like anything, for some reason, people's minds get drawn to the middle plan. But then there's the people that may have the cash, and they're like, you know what, I don't want any doubt that I'm not gonna get the services that I'm looking for. I'm just gonna pay for the highest price so that I can just harass Justin at any time of day. And as long as the price is high enough, when I get those phone calls from them, I'm like, yeah, hello, I'm happy to answer the phone. That kind of thing. So I would say if there's a process, that's what it would be at. Like minimum inputs, what it would be worth it to you to do it would be kind of like a low plan. And then I offer them higher levels of plan with more robust service and mostly my time. That's the difference too, is what they're looking for, what they're really wanting to buy from you is your time.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first one doesn't have much time. And the second one has a little bit more time. And then the third tier, the high tier, is like as much time as you want. And nobody abuses it. Nobody abuses it. Yeah.
And that's really important to recognize, is they don't really overstep boundaries. But from what I'm hearing is your plans are what I would call packages, where you give them 3 options. I usually talk about silver being the lowest one. Most people go into that gold, the middle one, and then your red plan is what I would call a diamond. And a lot of times the pricing is based upon how much access they have to you, or if they even have any access whatsoever.
Yeah.
But now you're giving them options about how to work with you as opposed to if to work with you.
Yeah. Exactly.
And when you're doing this, this is definitely changing how you look at pricing your services. How long were you actually thinking about maybe raising your rates before you actually did it?
Well, as far as the value pricing goes, I had just raised my rates to that 225 amount and did not see any actual results, from it. I mean, raising rates. It was only when I did the value pricing that I then raised my rates because I was offering package deals and a lot of them, and it really was very little from what the previous, and this was 4 years ago, now, or longer. This was a little over 4 years ago when I did this. I think mid 2016, so I don't know when that was. I lost my train of thought. I apologize.
Well, no, I was asking you about how long you were thinking about raising your rates before you actually pulled the trigger and did that.
Yeah. Like I said, I wasn't even really, I didn't know that raising my rates was I didn't know that I could do that because I just raised my hourly rate at that time, like the year before or whatever. And I thought, raising my rates again, like, oh, people are going to be pissed, like I can't do that. Like that would be too much to ask. But changing from hourly to value changed the game. It changes they're no longer, I don't even know how to explain it. It's changing the way people will view how they're paying you. They're paying for results now.
They're paying for results.
Right, they're paying for results. And so now they're no longer looking at your time and your inputs. And they're no longer fearful that you're going to take more time than you need to. You present the price to them, and then they can say yay or nay on it. They don't have to go with you, but they know how much they're going to pay you ahead of time. So they're very satisfied by that. And so there was an incremental rate increase. And then it was a matter of just testing the value pricing, you can increase your rates for new clients. And then eventually my time just was all like, essentially it was starting to get purchased.
Right.
So your time then becomes a commodity. And instead of saying, well, now my rate is $400 to $800 an hour, it just is built in the proposal. It's built in the plan. And now but they're not looking at your inputs again. It's the value that I'm bringing to them. Like, what is it that what do they expect to get out of this relationship? And is it worth it to them to pay for it?
And that's really part of the shift in how to value price, is that you're no longer at the end of the month giving them a line item invoice where everything is detailed with how much time and connected to time. You're now bundling things together where it's packaged and it's focused on helping them get a result. And they just believe that you can help them get that result, and the result that you get them is greater than the fees that they're paying you.
Right, right. Mm-hmm.
But being able to go back and raise your clients' rates without pushback is one of the things that so many accounting professionals hesitate. They overthink it, they postpone it.
Yeah.
And so was there something specific you did to go and talk with your clients about moving over into this new model with you?
Yeah, I mean, I was really transparent, and just let people know that I'm changing my my business model to this kind of pricing, and it's gonna ultimately, I'm gonna be increasing what I charge, but I also added some stuff like planning, tax planning. Everybody gets tax planning. It doesn't matter. It's just part of it now. Like you get tax planning, and so I did that. And then things like penalty abatement and audit protection. Like, so if they get audited, I'll be like, I'll represent you. If you get audited, I'll represent you. You don't have to worry about that. And then QuickBooks Online training is something that I had been doing, but I hadn't like really. I was just kind of doing it for free. My staff and I were doing it for free. I'm like, we really should be charging for this. And so I started doing that, and that's a line item in my plans now. So I added more value. I was like, listen, we're going to have pre-scheduled consultations. That's one thing I also implemented, is they don't schedule with me, I schedule with them. So they don't, you know, I'm making sure now that they get the value that they paid for. Like, you're going to come in here and we're going to sit down and we're going to go over this stuff. And I schedule their appointments. It's a little bit different now. That's the way I had been doing it then. But I pre-scheduled their appointments. And so I'm like, and for that, it's going to cost you a couple $100 more, like from a percentage. You know, they may have been paying in total $500 to $600 at that time. And I'm like, okay, now you're at like $900. Some of them, I categorized everybody. I was like A, B, and C. You know, I did that. And I'm like, okay.
Your clients.
I was rating my clients, and I'm like, okay, like this client I love, these clients I love. These guys, you know, take it or leave it. And then these guys, definitely, I think I'd be better off if I wasn't working with them. And I just provided them these proposals just like that. Nobody took the red folder plan, right? What I call the red folder plan, the concierge level plan, at first. None of my clients did. Everybody was like middle tier plan or compliance plan. So it has been a work in progress, but it definitely did. Like I said, I had very few people like go somewhere else.
Right.
But it was an incremental, it was a very small increase. And then ever since then, I have increased it a little bit more. But then I just recently sold a big portion of my portfolio to another colleague of mine, because I wanted to focus on smaller portfolio, higher price, smaller portfolio, more responsiveness. That's my new business model, and it's been working incredibly. And then, so I just shed probably 50% of my clients, 20% of my revenue, I sold it to another accountant. And then that opened my capacity up incredibly when I really took the steps into niche in the cannabis industry, because that's what I knew that I needed to do. But I had this whole portfolio, and it was a breakup. It was hard. A lot of people were really unhappy with me, but like my time is a commodity again, and I didn't have the time that I needed in order to make my ideal practice. So I had to do that. And so I parted ways with a lot of people, but they're very well taken care of. And they're actually happy. I haven't gotten any bad feedback about like, hey, why did you? And then a lot of them stayed on even at more, like even a higher price, even the prices that I'm now starting to, quote. But even then, I'm giving them a pretty good deal. Just being those people that really valued me, so I'm kind of capped their prices. But then now I'm taking on a much higher premium price kinds of clients. So did I answer your question?
You're doing great, Justin.
Okay.
And part of what's coming up is really how you've grown so much, even as an individual, as you've been moving forward in this direction over the past several years. Do you feel that there were any maybe personal hurdles you had to face in order to really move forward in this direction and claim that this is your specialty and that you're the expert for this?
Personal hurdles, I definitely had baggage that you and I have worked through. Do you have any that are coming up for you?
No, nothing specifically, but
Yeah.
what you did was a paradigm shift in your whole business model.
Yeah.
I mean, we all get in our own way. I get in my own way as I'm moving forward too, as well, because it's just different and there's some risk involved.
Well, when you say paradigm shift, that does remind me of like a scarcity versus abundance mindset. That's a big difference. A survival mindset. Survival and scarcity go together, and then transitioning from a survival scarcity, which comes from childhood, when you're living in a family with family dynamics that are very chaotic, and you learn to survive. And a lot of people will carry that mentality on into their adulthood, and they will have an incredible amount of opportunity and abundance around them, and they will never see it because they're still so scared and in that scarcity mindset. So then going into an abundance mindset and like actually becoming an adult, that's like, and the limiting beliefs around being an adult, like not treating things like you're a kid. Like, I work really hard, so I need to be rewarded. I should be rewarded for all the hard work that I do. And the harder I work, the more reward I will get. That's from childhood, right? Because that's how we do, that's what we tell our kids. There's just all sorts of things like, I did something bad, so I should be punished. And you punish yourself. Instead of just being, and then there is like kind of just a maturity aspect of it, like almost a spiritual aspect of just staying in the moment and not resisting the moment and the things that happen in life and the obstacles that you're encountering and those kinds of things, and just trying to face each one as they come, and with a maintaining a peaceful, non-judgmental state of mind. I don't know. I feel like that all kind of came together all at one time when I, just before I hired you, was like that pivotal, painful time that then I just became completely open to new potential, because I realized that I didn't know the answers anymore. Like I didn't know what was going on. And so then I hired you because I was like, Loren, tell me what's going on. I have no idea.
And it wasn't like this was an overnight change. We worked together for a couple of years to actually put this in place.
Yes.
and for you to be where you are now with your business. However, because you've been willing to really do the hard work in your business, as well as looking at, most of us are the bottlenecks to our own success. Let's just
Yes.
go there. Being able
Yeah.
being willing to look at that also, and you're now value pricing your work. How would you say that your business and your life has transformed? What's different?
Well, I mean, like just on superficial,
Yeah.
like just on the surface, just simply, I am making more money than I have ever had, and I have more time than I've ever had. I just finished this, I'm finishing the other tax season, and I am working less than I ever had. I remember like I was doing 4 to 6 p.m. every night, every day, for months during tax season, and now
4 in the morning to 6 p.m. at night, right?
4 in the morning to 6
Got
p.m.
it.
at night, right? Yeah,
Clarify
and tax accountants will identify with that, and
that.
that is insane. That's insane.
Yeah, not
And, and I
sustainable.
didn't even realize it. I didn't even realize it because that's what I thought people did. Like I thought if you're in the taxes, you're gonna get to take a lot of time off when it's not tax season, but then you work really hard. And I just was working really hard and then working just a tiny bit less all year round for years. And then but now being paid more, okay, allows you to hire better people and pay them well. And that's been great.
Mm-hmm.
I took on partners who bought into my business, so I'm getting paid for that, which is great. And they're bringing them being CPAs. I'm an enrolled agent, which you shouldn't undermine enrolled agents, but they were trained in CPA firms. They came in, they're my partners, and they're amazing, bringing in a level of sophistication that I could not meet personally.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing in systems, bringing in all sorts of new knowledge and information, new skill sets that complement my own. And we're just rolling, you know, it's just like, it's amazing. So.
Oh, okay, but you
Yeah.
know, there's a quality of life aspect that's
Oh,
happened
quality
as
of
a
life.
result of that. Like
Yeah.
Costa Rica, right?
So again,
Like going to Costa Rica with your family.
going to Costa Rica. Yeah, absolutely. Like, no, I'm spending more time with my kids and my family. I have a lot more flexibility with my time. We are also, another strategy is going virtual and paperless, virtual, using cloud-based systems to where I could be at home. Like right now during COVID, my kids are having to be homeschooled, and my wife she just took one for the team, and she's a nurse. She decided to take some time off while the kids had to be homeschooled, but I was able to step in so she could go run errands, so she could go to the gym and those kinds of things. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I don't even get in until 10 o'clock in the morning, and I work and I help the kids do their homeschooling and whatnot. And then of course, going on vacations, we had Hawaii plans before COVID hit. We had, now I have like 10 vouchers, airplane vouchers, that I don't know what we're going to do with, but we had all these plans, and then COVID kind of stuck us at home. But all of those things, we couldn't be better. It's, you know, money can't buy happiness, but I have a friend who says this, says, but it certainly helps you coast right alongside it. It definitely greases the wheels. It allows you to not worry about money so much when you have it, you know, you don't have to worry about it.
And I love the fact that you go through tax season differently than the traditional tax agents do. You're not burned out by the end of it.
No. It was the easiest tax year that I've had so far.
Kudos to you. Anything else that you feel is important that maybe I didn't mention, or that you wanted to make sure that we touched on?
No, I think I went off on a lot of stuff. So like, I think I pretty much said everything I want to say. Yeah.
Okay. And Justin, how can people get in touch with you?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you could just go to my website if you wanted to, especially if there's, you know, bookkeepers and tax accountants that have businesses in the cannabis industry, but you don't feel like you're qualified to meet the needs of those people, feel free to refer them to me. or one of my partners, calyxcpa.com, CALYXCPA.com, and you could see my team. You can learn about us, and we're based in Southern Oregon, Medford, Oregon, the Emerald Triangle. So.
Justin, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to share about your journey, the evolution, and how it's made a difference for you, your family, and also the fact that you get to continue deeply serving your clients. So thank you for sharing all that.
Well, thank you, Loren, for giving me the opportunity to show my enthusiasm.